Okay, welcome to this new video, and in this video we are going to do something special, I think. We are going to be installing Hall effect sticks into a original Xbox controller. You heard that right, Hall effect sticks into the original Xbox controller. So how did we get to that? Well, I saw a post on the original Xbox subreddit that someone had figured out a way to install these Hall effect sticks into a original Xbox controller. So these are the sticks you can order on AliExpress. I got them for AliExpress. I'm not really too sure what I paid for it. I will hopefully leave that up on the screen. But you basically receive these type of sticks with one black potentiometer and one orange one. And these are intended for the 360 Xbox controller. But you can modify them in a way that they are compatible with the original Xbox. So I thought I'd make a video about it and kind of show you how it works. I already did this mod a few times onto my controllers and they've been successful so far. To be honest, I did not have too much time to test them out yet. It's only been a few days, but I'm happy with the results so far. And yeah, I'm definitely planning to do this on all of the controllers I have, since sometimes they can be a little bit inconsistent in how the analog sticks are, so they're not really that bad. But sometimes when you plug in the Xbox controller into your Xbox, it can be that it is a little bit drifty. Now you can calibrate these controllers by simply putting the sticks like this, then it will auto-calibrate. Unfortunately, it doesn't get saved. So if you unplug your controller for a couple of minutes, then you plug it in again, you have to do that over and over again. And yeah, for me, someone who tends to sell these controllers sometimes, I mean, if I'm going to sell these things, I want them to work every time, and I do not want anyone to have to calibrate this every time. So when I heard about the fact that you can put Hall effect sticks in, and of course you can manually calibrate these, I think these are Ginful sticks, as you can see right here. So yeah, that was good news. So that's why I ordered these immediately and started working with it. And yeah, it's maybe a little bit tedious. Some parts of the process are tedious, but once they are installed, it's really nice. It really works well, and yeah, I've not had any problems with it. So I want to show you how to do this. But before we get into the controller at all, we need to make some modifications to the analog sticks themselves. So that's why I have two pairs of Hall effect sticks. So these phones I have already prepped. These phones are basically how they are for the 360. So in short, you need to understand how these controllers work for the 360 if you install these Hall effect sticks. So and maybe I get this the wrong way around, but basically for the 360, this is, for example, the 5 volt, then you have the data line, then you have a ground. And then on this side, this is the ground, this is the data line again, and here you have the 5 volts. And that's how they fit perfectly in the 360 controller. And for the original Xbox controller, it's a little bit different. There it is also 5 volt data line ground, and on this side it's also 5 volt data line ground. So basically, if you take a stick like this and just install it into your original Xbox controller, you may run into problems. And what I understand from the person who made the guide to how to install these sticks is that you can actually brick your controller if you just install it like this. So you need to make some modifications. So basically, I also switched the potentiometers around, but the most important part is that on the motherboard, you need to basically make sure that if this is the 5 volt pin on the motherboard, then, and this is the ground on here, you need to make sure that this pin goes to this side of the controller and this pin goes to that side of the controller. It's maybe a little bit unclear right now, but once we get into the motherboard, I think I can explain it a bit more properly. For now, we need to make some different modifications because we need to basically, there is a magnet behind here and we need to flip that onto the black potentiometer. Otherwise, the sticks will be inverted on one direction. So if you imagine this, the black potentiometer is up and down. If we do not reverse the magnet, it will be down and up. And we do not want that mostly. So we need to do some inversion on that. And I already did this with some other Hall effect sticks. But of course I want to show you the process. So we are going to go under the microscope and I will show you exactly how we are going to do that. So before we go under the microscope, let's just take off the potentiometer. You will need something like a pair of pliers for this. Of course, be careful with it. And in this case, I'm going to take the black one off of here. Need to be careful that you do not snap the plastic. Sometimes they can stick a little bit, so you need to move it around and then it will come out. Then we will take the orange potentiometer off of this stick. So we will going to match the black one, the black potentiometers and the orange potentiometers. Can be a little bit tedious sometimes, but here they come out easily. And now we are going to use a pair of tweezers, and these are titanium tweezers. They are bent tweezers, which I found are really nice to work with, and more importantly, they are non-magnetic, which maybe is handy in this case to work with non-magnetic tools, at least if you are going to work around the magnet actively, although we will also be using tools that are magnetic. But for now, we just want to remove the actual magnet part. I would like to slide part of the tweezer in here and then just basically move it upwards slowly. It's really easy to lose these. I already had them flying everywhere. Luckily, I caught them. But you want to be really slow with this. Just basically work them up like that, and then you can pull them off with your hand. And you want to do the same one for the orange magnet part right here. Same process, obviously. And then we have both the magnets removed. Now be aware that the middle part, if you maybe bend it a little bit too much, it can actually stick on the plastic right here, and the middle part can fall out. But you can install it easily back if you have a little bit of patience by pushing it in from this side. So from the side with the magnet, you can push it in basically. But it's not a big deal if the middle part happens to fall out. So in this case, we are going to be taking the orange magnet and we are going to put it on the Hall effect stick with the orange part already installed. So we're going to make sure that this part is already in the 5-volt data line ground position. And by installing this orange potentiometer on there, that means that this stick can be directly installed into the original Xbox controller. So no modifications need to be made on this stick. Mainly on this stick that will have the black potentiometers will need modifications, but we will get to that later. So I know this is not going to be very clear, but you basically need to align it as best as you can and then just push it down. And then look at it from the front and see if the magnet is as straight down as possible. So hopefully once the stick is installed, you do not need to do lots of manual calibrations with a pair of tweezers. You just want to get it as correctly as possible so you have less work later. Then you put on the potentiometer and then this one is done. So that one is prepped. Then we need to do the black potentiometer, but we cannot directly install it. We first need to deal with the magnet that is basically on incorrectly for how we are going to use the analog stick. So before you are going to twist out the magnet, make sure you mark the position of the magnet first. So I'm going to use some kind of Sharpie for that. And I like to put a little mark on the left side of the magnet. So that's the starting position. And you basically just want to put a little mark on there. Just make sure that it's clear that it is the left side that is visible. So this may be a little bit too much. I will take some off later. But just make sure that you have that indicated clearly, otherwise it's going to be guessing work and you do not want to do this process multiple times. I cannot recommend that. Alright, so now we are under the microscope. The tools you are going to want to use is for one a pair of bent tweezers. Maybe I need to show this under the phone actually. So you want to use a pair of bent tweezers. These are ceramic tweezers, which is also really nice because these are also non-magnetic. We're going to use these ones to hold this one in place for now. Then we have two different tools we're going to use. Here I have a multimeter probe, a really thin one. I've never actually used these, so these were nice and sharp. And you can see that this one has already bent quite a bit due to the fact that I've already used this to take out the magnets. And we're going to use a X-Acto knife, which I like to use this tip for the X-Acto knife, since this one is the sharpest one I have and the thinnest one. So yeah, we need to use 3 tools and we have 2 hands, I know. But yeah, it's quite a bit of a tedious work. Also here, with even if you hold this into place, you have a chance that the magnet might want to fly off. So yeah, but not too much talking. I think we should just start. So I like to start on here with the wet corner, basically. And I want to insert this into the side right here, and you are going to damage the plastic quite a bit. I will already tell you that. It's not really a big deal. And then you basically want to keep on frying this basically until you have enough. And you want to also use a little bit of force. Be careful with it. But yeah, each time you move it like this up and down, you want to push it a little bit down to hopefully get to the underside of the magnet as much as you can. And you kinda want to get it stuck in here, which it already is right here, as you can see. And you kinda want to get it into place. And yeah, like I said, the tweezers are not perfect. You might want to move them around a little bit. You just need to make sure that you get the magnet out of here. I think the person who made the guide actually recommended a screwdriver. I unfortunately do not have anything thin enough to get it in there. So this is maybe a little bit more destructive, but it has worked okay for me. It might block the view a little bit. I would recommend to do this under a microscope or under some kind of magnifying thing if you have it. You kind of want to get it in there, but it's a little bit tedious. I think we have a little bit of movement there. So this is where the X-Acto knife comes into place. And I want to place it parallel, or basically in the groove right here. It's a little bit difficult to see. And basically I want to also get it in there and start prying like this. And then you basically both want to pry them at the same time and use definitely a little bit of force to get this out. I will try and reposition this a little bit. Then basically you do that at the same time until the magnet wants to come out. And it's definitely not a perfect method, but yeah, this is the most tedious part by far of this whole process. Especially since you need to work with two precision tools, it can be quite a nightmare to get this out. So I mean, even I struggle with this. Definitely taken me quite a long time, even on the other attempts I've had to really get this out. But it is what it is. I mean, it's definitely moving freely. And I think we are almost there. Yeah, there we go. So you do not want to aggressively keep on frying it, since the magnet will fly off. I know that because I did that the first time, and yeah, the magnet went across the room and I could not find it. And you can see this is nice and magnetic, but we will not be needing this anymore. So anything magnetic, I recommend you get out of the place you are working with, out of the space you are working in, and you want to keep non-magnetic tools around. So in this case, I have the bent titanium tweezers, and I have the bent ceramic tweezers, and that's what we are going to work with. So we reposition it, and as you can also see on the plastic, here is the red mark. So here is where the magnet position was positioned. You want to get the red mark over here, but the magnet has a tendency to fall back on the old position. So if I let it fall, then the magnet will likely be facing down in the original position. So that is definitely a little bit tedious, but you can work with it. So we need to put it in this position. Then we grab it like this. And now it's really critical that you align it as best as you can, since it needs quite a perfect fit for you to press it in. So I will position it down like that. You might need to move it around quite a bit. And once I am convinced that the position is correct, then you want to press it down. So I hope I get it quick, and otherwise I will skip to the part where I think it is correctly aligned. And then press it in. I think we can attempt this, and that is what I mean. These pieces are also not perfect, but yeah, this might happen multiple times. Luckily the magnet is close by, so we can try again. But yeah, you definitely need a lot of patience for this. That's what I can tell you. And yeah, two ways to press it in, at least in this case I use titanium tweezers. If I'm convinced that the position is correct, then I tend to press it in like that. If I want to be sure that it falls into place, I flip around my tweezers and use this side like this to press it in. I think that's what we are going to do in this case. I'm not really too happy about this position actually. Yeah. So now we are going to take the underside of the tweezers and we are going to press it in. We want to align it properly. Then just press, and then it's into place. So you need to have quite a bit firm force once you are aligned to press it in. Otherwise it can get screwed one way or the other, or it can be up right here and down right there. Then you need to take it out and try again. But yeah, this was first try and not too bad. And it is in. So perfect. That means that we can go back to the phone again. And we can do the same process as with the orange sticks, where we need to take the magnet and put it on the stick like that. Of course, make sure it's aligned. It's a little bit too much to the right, so we want to move a little bit to the left. I think this is okay. Mini mark you can just leave on there, obviously. It's not going to impact the performance of the stick. At least not as far as I've noticed, so we can just leave this and then we can just put this on. And now we have prepped the actual sticks. And then for the next part, we would need to open up the controller, of course, since that's what we want to modify. And then get, of course, the original sticks out. So obviously, this is not really intended to be a tutorial for a analog stick replacement per se. So I'm just going to do it off camera. Of course, this is an older gen controller, so me with the soldering iron and some solder rig or the solder pump, it should be easy enough to take it out. I would not really recommend, especially with these Xbox controllers, to use too much heat, so hot air stations and such I would not recommend. But yeah, just need to take out the Hall effect sticks, and then I will be back with you to do the most important explaining for the motherboard part, since we need to prep that really well for this to be successful. Alright, so the analog sticks are both removed, and yeah, you can see some solder mask over here. This is a board I already worked on. In fact, I had already replaced one of these sticks. This is a third-party stick, and yeah, unfortunately it did not work properly. The left stick was original, and we are looking right now at the left stick, but on the other side of there, I want to quickly show you how it works in regards to the faults and the grounds and stuff. So right here, we can see the ground right here. You see it connect to now the ground plane right here. And yeah, there's where the 5-volt line will go. And it actually is connected to the 5-volt of the other side. So those two are both connected. So it's ground, data pin 5-volt, and then on this side it's the same thing. So here's the 5-volt, which will be connected to right here. If we turn the controller around, we now are looking at the left analog stick, but then from the upside. But here is where we are going to reinstall the orange stick. And why do we do that? As you can see right here, I had to desolder the left trigger to actually get access to the analog right here. So if we are going to be putting modifications on here, well, it will be really hard to actually make the modifications in the first place, since there's not a lot of room to work with if there is a whole trigger basically hiding the analog stick. So that's why I would recommend at least to put the orange stick right here. And if you want to be done quicker with the whole job in general, of course, it's always possible to just only use the orange potentiometers if you order multiple Hall effect sticks. You just only swap out the orange ones, so you do not need to make any modifications to the board. And of course, you can install them left to right and be done with it instead of doing modifications with the black potentiometers. But the reason I do actually do that is because otherwise I will be stuck with a bunch of potentiometers which I cannot use. So that's why I've come up with this compromise to just have one simple install and one where I need to do a bit more of modifications. But of course, you can mix and match how you wish on this side and basically install it, since we do not need to do anything with this stick, obviously. So then you can reinstall the analog stick, reinstall the trigger, and be done with this side. That's what I would recommend. I will do that off camera since it's not that interesting, obviously. Where the most work is at is on this side. And this side is completely free. If you turn it around, we can easily work with jumpers and whatever. So that is where we are going to install the black analog stick with the black potentiometers. And you see I put some marks down on here. So basically, when it comes to the motherboard, here is the 5-volt, so that's in red. Then we have the ground on this side. Then here's the 5-volt and there's the ground side. So if you're going to start like this, we have a problem, since on here it's exactly in reverse. So for the potentiometer, this will be the ground and this will be the 5-volt. Of course, we need to change some things in that regard. And for that, we need to actually prep the stick. Alright, in this part, I was supposed to use my phone, but unfortunately the phone camera corrupted and I cannot use the camera for that. I will do a simpler explanation in Paint. So we are working on the right analog stick. The dots you see here are supposed to be the legs of the potentiometer. You can imagine them going through hole, but they are not all going to go through hole. We're going to focus on the ground pins, the pins we will be using for the ground, which is this one and this one right here. So these ones are both not going through the motherboard. Instead, they will be basically, we will bend the pin 90 degrees and they will be going on top of the motherboard. So one right here, then one right here. On the motherboard here, there is supposed to be, top of here is mostly all ground, so everything around here will be ground. Which means that with a grinding pen or with a sharp tweezer, you need to be careful, of course. You can expose some of the solder mask and you will basically get a copper layer right here, and that should make it possible to solder the ground through there. Unfortunately, on this side, that is not possible because we have a wire right under the pin, and you have the risk of touching on that fire if you are just going to directly expose solder next to it. So it's preferred, I think, to use a bit of a jumper right there. That's at least what I do. I also recommend you use solder mask to cover up the fire, since maybe you'll see later in the video I struggle with that since I did not do that. So I recommend you do that. Basically, I make a little jumper a little bit further away, maybe around here. Just expose a little bit of copper right here, and then it makes for a nice connection. So that is the basic explanation of what you need to do with those ground pins. But we are not installed the stick yet. We first need to make more motherboard preparations, which I will explain right now. So we have this pin right here, and we want to basically make a jumper to right here, to this pad right here, since there's 5V. And then we want to do the same with this pin. We want to have a wire on here, then we want to connect it to right here, to the 5V. And if you're thinking, how can we connect the pin right here without not touching the outer pad? Well, that's where the prepping comes into place. What we want to do is actually take this stick out right now, and we want to put some solder mask down, basically on the ground pins or on the ground pads. Since we are not going to use them right here, we're going to use the ground from the top of the motherboard. So yeah, what you want to do, basically take some solder mask, or nail polish also works perfectly fine. Just something that can shield off the ground plane. So I want to take some simple UV solder mask. I use this stuff. In this case, it's in orange. And I will need to use this with a UV light, so it can actually cure. And I will actually use this UV light right here. It's a very easy one. I think most of the time 1 minute is more than enough to actually cure this. And what I like to do is basically just put a little bit down in the middle, for example. You do not need a hell of a lot. So let's start with this, for example. Then I will take my tweezer, take it on one side of the tweezer. Then we basically want to spread it around. And also a little bit inside the actual solder pad, to make sure that the solder is not going to creep upwards if we are going to be soldering on the actual pin of the potentiometer. So just be careful with that. Alright, so the solder mask is now applied and cured. So yeah, that's basically part 1 of the prepping. Now we are going back to this side of the motherboard, and we need to do part 2 of the preparations. And what I'm going to use for that is a grinding pen. You can see right here, grind right here, a little bit to the side. So if we install the stick again, it would be preferred to basically grind to the left of the R right here. That way it should be easy enough with a little bit of solder to actually connect this. Of course, you can also go a little bit under the pin, but just make sure to also go a little bit to the side. Oh, and while we're here, if we go to this side, you can see this goes exactly over the fire. So you can make a short jumper and basically have it right here. I find it a little bit too close to here, so I take a little bit more space and I will grind it right here. And there's nothing wrong with being a little bit generous with the amount of space you take. So this should be enough for this pin. Then I think we also have a nice little place right there. So we are going to grab our soldering iron, and we are basically going to tin this. Since of course that is much easier to do when there is no analog stick in place. So we will do that right now. So I think that is perfect actually. So then we do not need to worry about that anymore. We'll go give this a nice clean up. And now we can actually start the installation of the stick. So we grab our analog stick, we put it in, and then we flip the motherboard to basically double check our work. But I realized that I've covered the wrong solder pad right here. So that is not very smart of me. I don't believe that I actually just noticed that. I mean, mistakes happen obviously. And I will hopefully put an edit down so you will not make the same mistake. Luckily with solder mask it's easy to pull it off. Of course we actually want to go around the pad where the pin is sticking to. So I will fix that and I will be back with you. Okay, we are back. We have corrected our mistake, and the next part I want you to grab a multimeter and set it into continuity mode, which I was hoping I could get it on screen, but my program is unfortunately not working. But hopefully you will hear the beep, so we can check our work before we are going to install anything. So we know on the motherboard this is ground, here's our 5V, but we want to know if things are isolated properly and if things are connected. So if I grab a ground right here, for example, or let's say right here, yeah. Then if you go on here, you should not be hearing anything. So here you are hearing something, but that's only if I go really deep with the probe. So I think that should be fine actually. I will not be too worried about it since we only really need to work on the surface right here. So it's most important that here we do not get a beep. And here we do get a beep. So we might need to add a little bit more solder mask around here. You can see it's a little bit shiny around here. So it may be that that is going through. So I will need to crack that. And here, if I really push, I also get a continuity, but that is not worrying. The most important part is that this is completely covered, which here it clearly isn't. So I will fix that. Of course, the 5 volts here will be connected. So that is good. So I will also redo this a little bit. Then we should be going ahead to the installation of the analog stick. Alright, so I went over it again. So we can hopefully double check it. Yeah, now you see that it is actually properly covered. So that shouldn't be giving us any issues. And that means that we can actually go to the installation process, sitting right there. Then if you flip it, you want to double check your solder mask. Sometimes maybe if you go a little bit too much into the motherboard, let's say, it can actually become a little bit loose because the pin right here will actually puncture the solder mask. So then it will break really easily. So then you might also need to reapply a little bit. But here it should be fine, which is of course what we want. And while installing the stick, I would recommend to take your hand and actually keep your other hand under the stick so that it will stay into place, since sometimes it can kind of move around a little bit and then it's not really even on all sides. So I recommend to put it down with one hand and then with the other one you can lock down some of the ground holes so that it actually stays into place. And to make this a little bit easier, you need to use a little bit of flux to of course help the solder flow a little bit better into the ground hole. So this is not how it's supposed to look, but we just want this to be connected a little bit so we can now go around and actually install everything. Alright, so we have partially installed our Hall effect stick and I see that I kind of missed something here. I will clean that up later since we will be soldering some more anyway. But it's mostly connected and what we want to do now is basically we need to flip around the motherboard and of course we want to install our ground. So here I definitely recommend to get yourself some flux. Here it might be handy to actually tin this. And before I'm going to install anything, I want to make a jumper, of course. In this case, I actually like to use these metal legs, which I got off from capacitors, which I freshly installed. So you also will always have a little bit of excess leg, and that works really nicely here. And it's a little bit more clean than using actual jumper wires, but of course you can also do that. It's no problem. As long as it connects, it's perfectly fine. So I'm going to take my pliers right here and see how when I need to bend it. Might be much earlier actually. Take maybe right there. So here it is bended in the pliers. We are going to line that up. I think that it will work. It should work very fine actually. So I want to line that up. I'm going to get some tweezers into play right here. You can use any type of tweezers obviously, just so we can hold this into place a little bit. But this should keep it pretty much in position. Of course, you do not want to touch the plastic and there vent by wire. And you might as well give this a little bit touch so it will connect a little bit faster. That is pretty good. I think we can actually get away with bending this a little bit. And I need a little bit more solder for that. There we go. I think that is a fine connection. I definitely clean it up a little bit with some flux. And I think that is perfect. So that's not going anywhere. That's what we want, of course. And yeah, then to remove this, I tend to twist it a little bit. So this side is of course not really connected, so that should just twist off. You can also cut it off with some flush cutters, but might not really reach deep enough, unfortunately. Alrighty, and we disconnected it. That's the risk a little bit. Alright, so it has been, I think, half an hour since I last recorded, and I have just been busy to try and clean this up. And yeah, as you can see, it's a bit of a mess. So what happened is that I was trying to make this solder joint a little bit more nicely, which resulted in getting the heat on for too long. which resulted in the wire getting disconnected. And then after that, I tried to reconnect it, and then it got connected to this one. So I need to go back on my comment earlier that I would recommend you cover this up with some solder mask, so you just prevent the chance of that happening, since it costs quite a lot of effort and repositioning to get this right. So yeah, hopefully I corrected that earlier in the video. But anyway, it's all said and done. So this is connected to ground now. If we put a probe right here and here, you can see it's connected. Also on the pin itself, connected. It's not connected to right here. I will get a reading of 670 ohms, which is what you want. That's perfect. And if we go onto the other pin, which normally would be connected to ground, we get 765 ohms. And that is normal, obviously. So perfect. Now we can finally move on to this one. This should be a little bit easier, since we do not need to make any jumper wires. We should be able to just take some solder and put it against here. Of course, you need to watch out you do not burn the plastics. It's always a good idea to avoid that. But I think that should be good enough. Of course, you should always double check your work. So I will just take a tweezer and see if I can move it. Which is perfectly stuck to the motherboard. Now I will take my multimeter probes and I will see if this is also connected to ground. As you can see right there it is. If you go on the actual pin, it's also connected. If you go from one pin to another, ooh, there we go. So this is done. So now we need to do some work right here. I mean, first of all, I will clean up some of my work, which I've done earlier. So I think that does the trick. And you can actually try and get some tin on the top of the pin right here. You can do with a little bit of flux, or you can just basically let it float over there, which is not really something to worry about right now. We just get a little bit of solder into place already, which should help later. And yeah, right now we can go to the last step of installing the stick, and that's getting a jumper from right here to right here and right here and right here. So we can basically connect the 5V all together. And I'm going to use the same method for that. So I want to work with these metal legs from capacitors basically. So I will again be using pliers off camera to make it work. So you want to have it as close as possible actually. So I will be cutting off a little bit. And I will bend this into shape. Okay, so I bend it into shape, and the idea is that it sits like this. So a little flush, hopefully. So the left side should be sitting nice and flush. The right side of the pin actually goes a little bit nice one. So yeah, we basically want to have the left side flush. The right side actually goes a little bit upwards, so it can just touch the pin, and we want to move it as close as possible so it sits nicely. I think around there is okay. I will throw down some flux, then we can get started with installing it. So we want to actually take down the left side first. This thing wants to stay into place. So for now I will actually take that, just make a nice connection right here. Which this side is actually connected. To make it cleaner, we want to move this up a little bit. So that this side is now properly connected. This side I think can go a little bit better. So that should be properly connected. Now again we will take our multimeter and check our connection to right here. Here's where the 5V is going to eventually. So if you go into the wire, you get a beep. And if you go onto the ground, in this case we get nothing. I think I need to switch my probes around. So when I go to ground, yeah, we get 600, 700 ohms is what you want to see. So that's good. So it's not directly connected or anything. So the solder mask did its job. And if you actually test on the pin itself and on the 5V, it should also be making a connection. Which it does. So that is done. Then we can cut off our excess wire right here. So I think that's the best it's going to be. It should not be touching anything, so it's not really a big deal. Then we want to turn around the motherboard. And yeah, here we are going to do the same thing basically. So that's the second side installed. And yeah, now the best test you can do is, of course, go from the pin right here to right here. And right here. And right here. And now we need to check the ground. Ouch. Alright, so the ground is also connected, which is not ideal, of course. And I have put it a little bit too close to the wire right here. I cannot even put my probe in there. So I will just take the iron and I will heat up the wire right here. It should allow me to push it back enough to create enough space. And so we can retry this. So you can see I am actually crossing it over the pin right now. So let's see how that goes. Okay, I'm now getting a reading of 636 ohms, which means it's not touching anymore. And if we look under the microscope, we can see that it is basically floating above the this part. So the pin is actually in here, and if you move it around, you can see it's moving with the pin, which is of course good. So yeah, that is installed after some blood, sweat and tears. So I will clean this up and then we should actually test it. Alright, so you can see that the motherboard is together, and before we are going to connect it to the PC, since that's how I will test this, we're going to take our multimeters one more time and we're just going to do a check over of everything. Just to be sure, since connecting it wrongly is really bad for the motherboard, as I said earlier. So we need to be better safe than sorry. So I will start with the stick right here with the orange potentiometers. I will put one probe on ground. Then we go to the left pin right here. We can see there's the ground. Perfect. The other one on the right should be 5 volts. And I get 600 ohms, 700 ohms, which is perfectly fine. And here we get ground. And right here we again get 600 ohms. So this is perfect. On this side, you are going to want to have the reverse results of what we got here, since we reverse the potentiometer to make it compatible with the motherboard. So right here, instead of the ground being on the left pin, it will be on the right pin. So again, if you go right here, we have ground. We go onto the left pin, we have the 5 volt line, which is again 600 ohms. Right here, we want to have the ground right here. And here we want to have our 600 ohms, which we have. So everything should be fine, which means that we are ready to connect it to the computer. And you can just leave the motherboard like this. What you will need though, of course you cannot connect it like this, you will need an adapter that adapts disconnected to USB, so you can connect it to the computer. Of course, if you do not have a Windows PC, then you can connect it to your Xbox, and you can start a game like Halo, for example, something where you utilize both the analog sticks. And you can see if you experience drift or anything. If you do not experience drift or whatsoever, then perfect, you can use your Hall effect sticks. And if not, you will need to calibrate it on the console, which is a little bit more tricky, but I think it's doable. So yeah, but for me, we are going to connect it to the PC. So we got the original Xbox controller right here, and I have already plugged it into the computer. And you can see I've also already opened up the test side. It's the side right here. But you will notice if you just plug in your Xbox controller, it's not actually going to work. You will also need this right here. It's called XB2X input. So we need to click that. You will see that the controller is now connected. And if we push a button, for example, you can see that we get the analog sticks. And that one is looking pretty okay. And the other one is a little bit drifty. And I do not recommend you spin these sticks around, since if you remember, there is a auto calibration on here, so then it will basically attempt to auto calibrate, but of course that's not going to be saved. So you just want to leave the sticks as is, do not turn them. Try and remember the settings at which they are at right now, and we can see that the left stick is okay. I would say that it's within tolerance. So I'm actually going to leave that, since it's very easy to make things worse if you need to do like these smaller calibrations. But for this one, we definitely need to have some work, especially on the vertical axis, which is this potentiometer right here. We will need to work on that. And yeah, to do that, we of course we want to the stick, we want that to come down. So what I will do for that, I hope I remember the process. It's a little bit of a guessing game sometimes. But I think we want to push it down first, a little bit over where we want it. Then we stick the pair of tweezers in the left hole right here. Then we push it up a little bit. You will feel a little bit of friction. Yeah, and then when I let go, you can see it's in a much better position right now. I think actually at a pretty good tolerance. It's the same as the left stick. The horizontal stick is a little bit finicky, but yeah, it's not horrible. I think this is perfect. This is nicely within tolerance. So I will leave it at that. So yeah, in this case, it's not a lot of work. And of course, if you remember, put the magnet down as straight as possible, then the calibration should not be too bad. But yeah, this is perfect. If you want, you can go on until it's perfectly zero, but yeah, you will always have a little bit of a tolerance to work with. So I think we will leave it at that. And I will put the controller together. And I think we will actually connect it to the Xbox and see how it will work. So as you can see, the Xbox is onto Halo. And I actually have two controllers plugged in. The other controller is also Hall effect sticks. So we can, I guess, try both. I'm going to start a local multiplayer. So it will be a little bit easier to see how this is going to work. And if I hold the controller in the camera, I hope you can see clearly how this is going to work. So as you can see, we are booted into the game. I have not touched the controller yet. So I am jumping right now. And you can see that the controller is not ghosting or drifting if you look at the screen. So everything is perfectly still, which means that we have done the calibration correctly and everything is working fine. So I'm now just going to walk around. I am, the player one in this case. I am absolutely horrible at how these sticks works in this game, so I'm really sorry for the poor gameplay. But at least you can get an impression of how this is going to work. And I can see I have found the other controller. So we can shoot this person. You can see it's working. It's working really well. So if I are just going to do one analog stick at a time, then you can see it's pretty smooth. And I think it works as intended. I mean, I'm not a veteran at Halo or anything. I've never played it. I've never even owned an Xbox back in the day. So, but I think this is, this works perfectly. Of course, you have the inverted controls. In this case, in the game, it's inverted, but of course we flipped around the magnet, so that also means that this is working perfectly. So I use the R3 button for that, I thought that. So you can see that that is absolutely working fine. I think we have proven that the Hall effect sticks work as intended, and are definitely a great alternative to the original sticks. I mean, I think these sticks were perfect for what they were back in the day, but I think at this point, almost 25 years later, you are going to run into problems with them. At least with the one original stick. I think I actually tried to refurbish it. So I took it apart and just cleaned out the grime. It was very dirty. And then put it back together. It does seem to still work okay. But of course, the big advantage with this one is that if you can always recalibrate it. Of course, it needs to be done manually. I don't think there are any tools for software calibration at the time of this video. But yeah, you definitely have options to mess around a little bit with how perfectly centered they are. So yeah, I mean, it's really a great alternative. Really happy that even now for the older consoles, we have an option to install these Hall effect sticks. Of course, I have installed them in the modern controllers, but now at least we can also have them in this case in the Xbox controller, and of course in the 360 controllers as well. So yeah, I think that is great progress, and yeah, I hope to see, of course, maybe for more sticks that we can install them, maybe even in PlayStation 2. Although I've never really ran into analog stick problems. I mean, especially the right analog stick is almost never used on that console. But yeah, at least it's good to see that these controllers can still have a good second life. Since I think for me the biggest problem with them were the analog sticks. I think the second biggest problem are the rumble motors, which sometimes are a little bit worn down and do not really work as well as they used to be working. Even in this case, I think the rumbles are pretty soft, so yeah, that is a little bit problematic. But hey, conclusion, at least the Hall effect sticks are working and we did a good install. So that marks the end of the video. If this video was informative for you, you can leave a like, you can maybe leave a comment about things which I could have done better or things which I've done okay. You can of course subscribe to the channel, maybe check out some other videos where I also installed Hall effect sticks into all sorts of different controllers. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good day. Okay, maybe before I completely close down the video, I will also quickly give a run of the other controller, which also has Hall effect sticks. Exactly the same brand, of course, the same process, etc. And yeah, they are working perfectly. I did this one, I think, 2 weeks ago, and it's still holding up. The idea is that I keep a hold of these for a while, just to see how they go, and if they work well, then I hope to just sell them on. Yes, I will be confident enough to sell these on, since I think they will be working for a good time. So yeah, Okay, now the official end of the video, and yeah, peace.